What's up YouTube? Today we're going to discuss why you should upgrade both the front and the rear sway bar on your Mini Cooper. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and stick around. You're going to want to watch this whole video. First we need to talk about some misconceptions about sway bars. You'll hear quite a few people actually saying that when you're coming into a corner, you're going to get body roll and it's going to put pressure on the outside tires. Totally true. And what they say is what that does is causes the sway bar to come up on one side, which causes the other side to push down on the inside tower. On the inside tire. That's not true. It's not even physically possible. Sway bar, solid piece of metal. If one side comes up, so does the other side. Where that misconception comes from is with an OEM sway bar, or even a smaller than OEM sway bar, the side on the inside that has less weight on it, because the body's rolling towards the outside, isn't going to pick up as much because the sway bar is a torsion spring. So when this side picks up, this side has weight on it, the thinner bar isn't going to pick up as much as the other one, but it's not going to push down. It's not physically possible. And when you go to a thicker bar, they pick up more evenly. That's why when you have a thicker bar, you have less body roll, because they pick up evenly. If it pushed, it would actually cause more body roll. Why would you want that? You don't. And it would be called it wouldn't be an anti-roll bar at that point. It would just be roll-over bar. Okay, next talk about weight transfer and how a thicker roll bar in the front or the rear affects your understeer and oversteer. If you do what most people do, which is if you're only going to do one sway bar, do the rear one. Don't do the front one. If you go to a thicker sway bar in the back, what will happen? Well, yeah, let's start with that. If you go with a thicker sway bar in the back, what happens is when your body goes in, when you come into a corner, your car's still going to do the body roll, but in the back, since you have a thicker sway bar, the back is going to roll less. And since the back rolls less and the front rolls more, your front is going to put more pressure on the front outside tire, which is more weight. It's the weight transfer on that outside tire, which is going to cause it to stick to the ground better, which is going to cause you, if you let off or hit the brakes, it's going to cause that back end to come around. That's how you get understeer with thicker rear sway bar. And if you go with let me explain that actually. Let me explain a little bit more. The reason it's putting more weight on the front tire is because since the rear sway bar, when the car's rolling, since the back isn't rolling as much, less weight is being transferred from the inside tire on the back. And that weight it's still transferring. It just has to transfer somewhere. So it's all going to transfer to that front tire instead of the back tire like it would normally with the OEM sway bar. I hope that clears that up. Now, same thing, if you go with on the front sway bar, when you beef up the front sway bar, it's the same thing, except instead of controlling your oversteer with a thicker sway bar, you control your understeer with a thicker sway bar in the front. Same principle, it's just the opposite. Now, the reason a lot of people will tell you, oh, you don't want to upgrade the front sway bar on a Mini Cooper, because it puts the understeer back into the car, which is true if you don't size your bars right. But if you size your bars right, you're going to adjust your understeer and oversteer the way you need it for your driving style, regardless of whether or not you have a bigger front sway bar or not, or a stiffer front sway bar. Like I have a 27 millimeter front sway bar on my car right now, stock. You can see that's my OEM bar. I don't know if you can see it, but it's 22.5 millimeters. Okay, sorry, there's a bunch of bees out here flying around me again. So yeah, so my stock bar was 22.5 millimeters. My new bar is 27 millimeters. That's 4.5 millimeters difference. When you upgrade your rear bar, most people will tell you to go to a 22. I believe the OEM rear bar is 17. That's a 5 millimeter difference. So you're still gaining a half of millimeter between the front and the rear over OEM if you go to a 22 in the rear and a 27 in the front. And not only that, but when you go to the 22, you're going to the 22 adjustable, and you're going to put it on the stiff setting. So it's you're not gonna have a bunch of oversteer because you went to a 27 millimeter bar. And not only that, go bigger than 22. Go to 24 if they make it. I don't know. 20. If I ever swap out mine, mine's perfect. I'll never change. I have a 22 and a half. I'm not gonna say I'll never change it, but I have a 22 and a half, or a 25 and a half hollow bar, which is the equivalent of a 22 millimeter solid bar. But if I ever did upgrade it, I would just go to a 25 that was three-way adjustable, and I'd start out on the softest setting, and I'd work my way up. But I would never get rid of the 27 millimeter in the front, because just the benefits of the 27 millimeter bar outweigh anything that you could ever say, unless you went smaller than 22 in the back. If you go smaller than 22 in the back on the stiffest setting with a three-way adjustable bar, you're probably not gonna. Some people actually go to the middle setting, but and they don't have any issues. I have mine on the stiffest. That's what Way Motorworks recommends, is put the rear bar on the stiffest setting, which is why I would say if you upgrade to a bigger bar, you would add adjustability back into your bar, because right now I feel like I could only make it have more understeer. I couldn't really make it have. I don't feel like that's how it is. I can't make it have less understeer than it has, and it doesn't. But as I'm saying, I don't really have understeer. If I come into a corner really hard, I just have such good traction because I have no body roll. I can't say no body roll, but very little body roll. So instead of, like I was saying earlier, instead of when the body rolls, we'll go back to the same direction. When the body rolls, instead of having the back end roll less and the front end roll more, which puts more pressure on the front, they're both rolling about the same. So, which makes the car just come around the corner. And since the sway bar, when you put pressure on the outside and it pulls down, up on the suspension on the other side, it actually, instead of just stopping the car from rolling, it actually lowers your car. So you actually have a lower center of gravity while you're going around corners, which obviously helps you when you're cornering. So yeah, it's night and day. I would never recommend, well, I wouldn't say never, but I definitely recommend upgrading both sway bars over just one sway bar. You know, a lot of people will also say that if you go too stiff on your sway bars when you're driving down, this is true actually, if you're driving down a bumpy road and your bars are too stiff, you're not going to have, your independent suspension isn't going to be as independent. But with a 27 millimeter bar, I can tell you, I drive down on my way, I drive to work, I drive smooth roads, I drive bumpy roads, I drive dirt roads. It doesn't feel any different in a straight line than it did with the OEM bars, no matter what kind of road I'm on. The only time it feels different, it feels different at slow speeds, is if I'm going over some uneven terrain. I can feel that it might want a three-wheel sometimes because the bars are so stiff. But other than that, you know, when I'm driving normal speeds, it doesn't feel, it's not more bumpy, it's not less bumpy, it's the same. In fact, if somebody swapped out your bars while you weren't looking, well, you'd probably have to not be home, but if somebody swapped out your bars while you weren't, and not told you, you wouldn't notice it until you started taking corners fast. In fact, even taking corners slow, you might not notice it, but taking them fast, you'll definitely notice it. It's a huge difference. I think a lot of the reason people say not to do the front sway bar, not only because they say, which is true, it will give you more oversteer if you don't correct it with the rear bar. more understeer. I mean, it will give you more understeer if you don't correct it with the rear sway bar. Correct it with the rear sway bar. Put the right rear sway bar on, and you won't have the problem. It doesn't make sense to say that if you put a thicker front sway bar on, you can't fix it by putting a thicker rear sway bar on, because you can. But I think the reason that a lot of people are against it is because the amount of work that they think that it takes to change out the front sway bar. It takes more work than the rear sway bar. I have videos, if you check, I'll link them in the description. I have videos on how to install both. Neither sway bar is as much work as people will tell you. You don't have to remove your shocks from the car to do the rear sway bar. You have to unhook the tops. You could probably get away with only unhooking the top of one shock, the side that you're going to actually pull the sway bar out. But I unhooked both in my video. But and then the front sway bar, people are removing their whole subframe. You don't have to do that either. In fact, you watch my video, you'll see how I do it. It's nowhere near as hard as people make it out to be. Definitely get an alignment after doing your front sway bar. You could probably get away with it after not doing your rear sway bar. In fact, I didn't do an alignment after doing my rear sway bar until I did my front, and I also did my camber plates. And after a couple weeks of driving, after doing my camber plates and front sway bar, my inside of my tire was almost bald. I had to replace my front tires. But since then, I've gotten an alignment and my tires are fine. But yeah, I definitely think that's why. It's just people think it's way more work than it is. And if you watch my video, I think my video might actually be the only video on how to install a front sway bar, at least on an R56. And it's not what everybody thinks. You don't have to. People are telling you have to pull the front of the car off. You have to take the whole sway bar off. And I didn't take the front of the car off. I unbolted the sway bar, or the subframe, not the sway bar. And you obviously have to take the sway bar off. But I unbolted the subframe and pulled it down. I didn't unbolt the front of it, but enough just to where I can get the bar out, and then I can put a new one in. And it's not that hard. In fact, if you watch my video, you'll see it's not a hard job. I think pretty much anybody could do it. So, do I think you should upgrade both sway bars, front and rear, on your Mini Cooper? Yes, you should. And the reason why is like I said, coming around the corner, you don't want all your weight to be on the outside tires. If you can, the less body roll you have, the more you're going to have weight on all four tires, which is just going to give you better traction. And if you have better traction on all four tires, you're going to have less oversteer or understeer, whichever way you dial in your car. Some people want more oversteer, some people want less. But you dial it in the way you want it, whether you have a bigger front sway bar or bigger rear sway bar. And bigger up to a point. You don't want to go more than 20. I wouldn't think you'd want to go more than a 27. Maybe you could. I've never tried it, so I can't really speak on that. But 27 is great, and yeah, you could actually still go bigger than what I have in the rear right now, and driving characteristics are amazing. So yeah, I definitely say upgrade both of your sway bars. In fact, I messaged one of my friends on Instagram the other day who owns a online shop that sells a bunch of aftermarket parts for Mini Coopers. It's Speed Tech Motorsports. And I messaged him on Instagram. I made sure before I made this video, I said, hey, do you have front and rear sway bars for every Mini Cooper? I said, because I'm about to make a video and I need to tell people where they can buy these bars. Well, you can buy them at Speed Tech Motorsports. I'll put a link to his website in the description, and I'll put I have a bunch of links down there. I have a Facebook group too. It's called Mini Cooper DIY for people who work on their own Mini Coopers, which is going to be pretty much anyone who watches or subscribes to my channel. We're going fast. In my video that I just put up the other day, I was saying that we got 200 members in the last week. Now we're over 370 members in the last week. and it's only been maybe 4 days or something like that. I'm not sure, 3 or 4 days. But yeah, it's growing fast. Mini Cooper DIY. There's a link to that in the description. I have a link to some really valuable tools to any Mini Cooper owner. Also, those links are in the description. Those really help out my channel if you click on those. Yeah. So so if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like this video, give it a thumbs down. And I'll catch you in the next video.